And welcome back to Subculture. Well, things that we learn online sometimes are not exactly true. Recently, I had a look and found out that apparently my parents sold their house 2 years ago for $1 million. That didn't happen. And also, I found out that apparently my business is worth $1.4 million. Well, I can only wish that was the case. Now, those are some of the things that Nicolette Minster is looking at in her Melbourne Comedy Festival show called Net Worth. And we thought we would actually get Nicolette on the phone today to talk about what inspired this show and what this show is all about. So welcome to the program, Nicolette.
Oh my gosh, Dave, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Now, we mentioned a couple of things there about how you can read things online that are not exactly true. And I understand the same thing happened to you with Net Worth Ranks. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was back in May of 2021, which sounds like such a long time ago now. But I was scouring the internet and I discovered, I was putting my name into Google.
Yep.
Just popping my name into Google, a little bit of an act of self-love, wanted to have a little bit of a glance at how I was being perceived and to see if what was out there was true. And I stumbled across this website that told me that I was, worth $15 million. And now that wasn't necessarily the most shocking part, but the most shocking part was that it also went on to tell me that I had brothers, that I had two daughters, and that I was married to a guy called Jorge Newman. And now none of this was true, but it was just so oddly specific.
Yeah.
And at that point I thought, well, I have to know more. I have to know more about potentially who this other version of myself might be.
Now, that's not a site like Wikipedia. I mean, at one point, Wikipedia said that I was married to a former co-host, which was definitely not true. So, how did that happen, and what did you find when you started to research it more?
Well, see, the thing that shocked me the most, I think, is that according to the internet, I'm the only Nicolette Minster in the world. Now, I wouldn't have thought that. Nicolette's not a particularly common first name. It is just a French version of Nicole. There are Nicolettes out there, and I didn't think that Minster was a particularly uncommon name. But pair them together, and according to the internet, there is just one of me. So whenever I've Googled myself, I've always found myself, and most things have tended to be relatively accurate. And as someone who is not objectively famous or a celebrity, it kind of struck me as uncommon to discover that there would be something just so fantastically incorrect about me on the internet. And now, if you've encountered these net worth websites before, which it sounds like you have, you discovered that your business was worth $1.4 million. I just want to let you know that the bank won't take that as any kind of actual real credible valuation, but don't you worry, I did try.
Yeah.
Most of these websites are kind of used for clickbait, so they're full of ads, right? So they're full of weird kind of ads, like ads for tinnitus cures or any clickbaity kind of ad. What are the Kardashians up to next? You'll never believe what this guy eats for breakfast, that kind of stuff. But Net Worth Ranks had no photos and it had no ads. I was like, this is weird. Like, the plot really thins at this point.
Yeah.
So I kind of went about seeing how I could get in contact with, the nameless, faceless entity behind this website. And it was really just it spiraled into a bit of an identity crisis.
Yep.
And I thought maybe there's a story in this. And eventually what ended up happening, and obviously I'm keen not to give any spoilers, but I ended up reaching out to the people that this website said I might be related to in an alternative life.
Yep.
And kind of started to form relationships with them.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the show itself. Like, how did you turn everything that happened into the show, and how long did that take you?
I've been working on it for a little while. I stumbled across the website and I was going for a walk with a friend and colleague of mine, Sammy J, who's used to be in a double act with Sammy J and Randy, is now hosts ABC Radio Melbourne Breakfast, and had a TV spot weekly on the ABC that we would do together. And we went for a bit of a walk, and I told him about this website and said, do you reckon there's a story in this? Because has this happened to anyone before that you know of? And should I just, balls to the wall, just dive deep and see what happens? And kind of at that point I just went, well, he agreed that there might be something in it that might be worth exploring. And at that point I just went, well, let's just go for it. Of course, the tricky part is that because there's only one of me in the world, I kind of felt quite vulnerable in that I couldn't catfish anyone.
Yeah.
The minute that I actually started talking to people, I realized the vulnerability of actually opening up my life in order to talk to, strangers on the internet. And I think that there's, we're all a bit scared of being scanned. We're all a bit scared of data security. And at the end of the day, the majority of people on the internet are just people like you and me. We're not out to get anyone. We're just there trying to make sense of this landscape where we feel like we need to have a presence, and if we don't, then do we exist? So and then it just became about seeing what else was happening in my life at the time, and I'd had a baby during the pandemic, so what the show has become, as most festival shows really are, was somewhat of an identity crisis, to the soundtrack of a dial-up modem.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a very, very personal show for you. Did that change the way that you approached it at all?
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I've always been an autobiographical comic. I've always been someone who's going to go out on stage and tell stories from their life. So I think it's just meant that it's allowed me to, to be vulnerable and to explore things. Like there's themes in the show about infertility and postnatal depression, and to be able to explore that and then have audiences kind of, to see that resonates, to feel a little bit less alone, which I think is what comedy does so brilliantly, as music does as well. But what comedy can really do is help you find people who are going through the same things as you, and find the catharsis in it together as a group.
Definitely. Being so personal with your comedy, do you find that people around you as well, talk to you about things? Because I found that I did my first stand-up gig just before we went into lockdown, and one person came up to me, and my mum said, if I hear any stories about me tonight, I'm disowning you as a child. Do you have that kind of thing because your comedy is so personal?
Oh, I haven't lost any relatives yet. But look, let's give it time. No, unfortunately, I find that friends and family are just disappointed when they're not mentioned.
Yep.
But I encourage them to get up and give it a try themselves, and they can air their grievances in a public forum.
Yeah. You do talk about some very, very deep topics, and like you said, there are people out there who listen to your comedy and relate to that. Do you have those people come up to you and say, hey, thanks for talking about that, or something like that as well? Like, do you have people tell you their personal stories?
Yeah, absolutely. A few years ago when I was going through infertility, does it ever end? I wrote a blog about the IVF experience because I felt like there was no one talking about it, or it was, there was a fair bit of shame, and it often can be hard with things that are medical. I appreciate that, because it's, everybody's journey is so incredibly different. But I think sometimes when there are parallels, it does enable people to find the humour and find as I said earlier, the catharsis in it. So yeah, I love it when people can reach out and talk to me about what truly resonated for them. And I think that as a comedian you can spend, or just as a storyteller in general, you can run yourself ragged thinking, are people going to relate?
Yep.
And there is so much about this life that is a universal experience. Obviously, comics are still talking about COVID, and we're all still talking about that experience. And absolutely, yes, that was a trauma that we all went through or are still continuing to go through together. But often I find the more niche you can get, the more enjoyable it can be, also for yourself, to realise that you too and your story, as it has had value in the long term.
Definitely. And I am sure you're going to have some people come up to you after this show as well with stories about stuff online. I have a friend who went through the very, very weird experience of having to share the same name as a porn actress. And
Amazing.
Whenever she went for job interviews or anything like that, people would actually ask, we Googled your name and we found some videos. So I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people come up and tell you stories about their online experiences as well.
Well, that's it, because I'm devoid of that experience, Like, it's all very well and good being told that you're special and being told that you're unique. But, I've only had one opportunity to kind of have a glimpse at an alternative life. But there are people out there who've been able to send me photos of themselves as, netball under 15 champion and all kinds of things. I had an audience member in last night who let me know that her alter ego online is an R&B singer.
Oh, wow.
So, entirely different lives, same name. It's just, it's been a real joy having people tell me all about what they find when they Google themselves, and also for them to feel like they have a forum to share it.
Yep. Now, for all of our listeners out there, if you want to head along and check out Nicolette's show, it is on now at the Melbourne Comedy Festival right through until the 23rd of April. It's on 9 p.m. and 8 p.m. depending on what night you're going, but it's at the Melbourne Town Hall in the Portico Room. All of the ticket information is up there on the Melbourne Comedy Festival website, so go along and check that out, and you can grab your tickets there as well. Nicolette, what would you like to say to everybody out there who is thinking about heading along and checking out your show?
I'd say you've got absolutely nothing to lose. It's a great opportunity to come and see a wild story about what happens when you take the internet too seriously. And I can guarantee you, it's a promise to all of my audience members, that you will leave as an entirely different person.
Well, there you go, everybody. Head along and check out Nicolette's show called Net Worth at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. All those details are up there on the Comedy Festival website. Nicolette, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an absolute honour having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.